I'm Jim Driver and welcome to the video. It's June as I record this, very warm in sunny Ramsgate, and we're entering the Glastonbury Festival season here in the UK. Well, I thought, why not talk about the 7 big star headliners that never were. Now, I'm not talking about also-rans or not yet made it. I'm talking about bands who were big at the time and who somehow never got to be Glastonbury headliners. Maybe they were never asked, maybe they turned it down, or maybe something else happened. Let's explore it together, shall we? Yes.
I will explore this with you, but I run this operation down to the smallest detail.
And the first band we're going to talk about is the Kinks.
That's the way that I wanted to stay, and I always wanted to be that way for my Lord.
Now, the Kinks were supposed to be playing the first ever festival in 1970, which in those days, when it was the precursor to the festival we know today, it was organised by Michael Davies. He'd been to see a festival at Shepton Mallet at the big showground, where I think Led Zeppelin were one of the headliners, and he got the idea that it might be quite a jolly wheeze to have a festival like this on his farm. So he was charging £1, and he booked the Kinks and Wayne Fontana and the Mindbenders, and they pulled out but were replaced by Tyrannosaurus Rex. In return for your £1, you got to see the bands and you got a pint of milk. So, all good, eh? Anyway, that was the first one. Now, Ray Davies himself has played the Glastonbury Festival many times, solo in the acoustic tent, because his friend and agent Paul Charles books that. And also he did a slot in 2010 on the main stage, which was the Nostalgia set on the Sunday afternoon. Now, I know that because I was there. I was there with a band called Gandalf Murphy and the Slampovian Circus of Dreams, who incidentally were playing in the acoustic stage, and so I saw Ray Davies then. That was the nearest the Kinks got to headlining at Glastonbury Festival. I've been to Glastonbury many times, though I only ever paid when I was having a stall there. But it cost me £500 back in the 1980s and 1990s, so that was quite a lot then. Not so much now. You won't get much for that now. Same price as a normal weekend ticket, isn't it? Well, you tell me. If I was going into hospitality, I'd be paying a lot more than that. And I've done a video about stuff like this, if you want to check it out, a Glastonbury video. Let's get on with headliners. And the next act we're talking about is Kate Bush.
Too hard, too greedy. How could you leave me?
Kate Bush, you'd think, would be the archetypal Glastonbury headliner, but she never has played there in any shape or form, even during her peak in the 1970s and early 1980s. She then stopped playing, obviously, for a while and then reformed. Was it 2 years ago? Reformed. How can a person reform? See, this is the sort of thing you get on this channel. Other channels don't make mistakes like that, do they? I'd make a comment about that down below if I was you. I'd comment about how shoddy this video is. You don't deserve this. You deserve better. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? Because the next one, number 3, is not Kate Bush, because I've done Kate Bush and I've done the Kinks, and number 3 is the Smiths.
Never see you again. I'll probably never see you again.
Because, believe it or not, the Smiths never played at Glastonbury either, which again, they would have been one of the top bands at the time, and I believe they almost played at Glastonbury, but I believe one member of the band, I'm not saying who, maybe wasn't that keen. There were certain things that Morrissey, when he was playing at the place like the Hop Farm, I mentioned this before, insisted that all the outlets selling meat were covered up during his set, and I believe something similar was suggested if they wanted the Smiths to play at Glastonbury. And obviously Glastonbury is a big money-making machine. No matter what you think about the what's the word? There's a word for it, isn't there? There's a mystique around Glastonbury. That's not the word, but there's a mystique around at Glastonbury that's all for charity and it's like a really worthy thing, which is undoubtedly true to a certain extent, but it's also a huge money-making enterprise. Let's not forget that. And not selling meat during the Smith set was never anything that anybody would ever sign off, especially not Mr. Michael Davies, I'm sure. And the fourth act that never got to headline, even though they were possibly the biggest band in Britain at the time, were the Jam. Now, the Jam never played there. Paul Weller obviously has several times. I would suggest that they probably split just before Glastonbury became mainstream enough to include them, because the first few years, certainly up to 1980 something, Glastonbury was still a bit of a hippie thing, because let's face it, it was started by Michael Davies, who wanted, he was very impressed by the Bath and Wells Festival and wanted to replicate it on his farm and wanted to earn a few quid. And why not, eh? As the multi-millionaire Jeremy Clarkson will be very quick to tell you, farming is not very profitable, even when Amazon are paying you £1 million an episode. But let's not get too involved in that. It's politics, and everybody knows that I always get off worse when I'm being controversial and being political. If I was to say I hated Nigel Farage, just to give a hypothetical example, vast swathes of people would stop watching this video and never come back ever again. So I definitely won't say that Nigel Farage is a crook or a half-wit. Well, he's not half-wit, obviously, he's very clever, and I'm never going to say that, so if you think you heard me say it, you're totally wrong. I never would say anything like that. And no rewinding, by the way. At this stage, while I'm being a bit bossy, can I just say, if you're not already subscribed, it will be a great help, especially if you're not Nigel Farage. If you could please subscribe, like, comment, let me know what you think, and share it with your friends. And if you're Nigel Farage, you can share it with all your followers. See, there you go. I'm not all bad. And thank you very much. And let's get on with the music. And who's the next one then? We've done the Jam, the Kinks, Kate Bush, and somebody else. The Smiths, yes. And who else are we going to do now? We're going to do Prince. Now, Prince very nearly did play there.
I don't care, never mind. Ronaldo solo, let's go!
I can't remember what the year was. It was back when he was very, very famous. And he was so famous that he couldn't be announced. Apparently, this is the story which you hear. Michael Davies was so pleased about having Prince, because he'd been after him for 1 or 2 years, and he'd finally got him to agree, but it couldn't be announced. But he let it slip that Prince could well be playing. And Prince got wind of it, and as we know, he could be a bit prickly on these things, and he pulled out at the last minute. So Prince at Glastonbury would have been awesome. Do you think? Did I just say awesome? Yes, and I mean awesome. It would have been great, because I'm a big fan of Prince. Not everything he did, because he was very prodigious, but a lot of the things he did were very, very good. And I'm a big fan, as I am, of the next act, which is Led Zeppelin.
You need cooling, baby, I'm not fooling.
Hang on a minute, you're going to say you're not a big fan of Led Zeppelin, are you? No, I'm being very confusing today, because I've been talking about Nigel Farage. No, I haven't. And I've been talking about things I shouldn't be talking about. And I said that, as you know, I quite like Led Zeppelin's music, but I can't get over the fact that they basically stole all their songs. Well, not all their songs, but quite a lot of their songs were borrowed from people without giving credit, or more crucially, paying them. And it wasn't just once or twice, it was many, many times, and I've done a video about it.
I'm dazed and confused. Is it stay, is it go?
But let's not go down there. Led Zeppelin would have been the archetypal band to play at Glastonbury, surely, especially during the latter part of their heyday, because they were just hippie enough to get into Michael Davies's orbit. And they were rocky enough. I think it would have been great, actually. The only times I've seen Led Zeppelin, when I saw them at one of their reunions at the O2, I snuck into that and I left halfway through, to be honest. But then I saw them back in their heyday at something like Nebworth or something like that, and I thought they were pretty good. But of course, then I didn't know all the stuff about them boring songs. Actually, yes, I did. Steve Marriott basically said every time he went on stage at the Cricketers and elsewhere that Led Zeppelin were a bunch of war, and they nicked his song and all this, right, and nicked other people's songs.
I'm fooling. Hey woman, you need cooling.
And so I think it's probably true, because, Steve Marriott may have been a bit of a, he was a total legend. So there we go. We just talked about number 6, and we're doing 7, aren't we? So guess who the 7th is? And last but by no means least, we're talking about Pink Floyd, who never actually played the festival. In 1971, the year after the first effort that Michael Eavis organised by himself. Andrew Kerr helped by a load of people, including Arabella Churchill and a guy I know called Thomas Crimble, who was the guitarist with both Savoy Brown and Hawkwind. They organised it and booked Pink Floyd. This is a free festival because it was going to be paid for by people they found who were rich, who could afford to pay for these things. And it was the festival ethos of the time, having free festivals. And Pink Floyd were booked, but for some reason they didn't play. This was just before Dark Side of the Moon was due to come out. So I think the idea was that they wanted to preview that, and they thought maybe that a free festival that no one ever knew anything about, because don't forget, back then there was no history really apart from the one festival where practically all the bands cancelled, and so they pulled out, which is a bit of a shame because I can just imagine Dark Side of the Moon being previewed at Glastonbury, the perfect place, I would have thought. That year was the first occasion in which the pyramid stage was constructed. It was made out of scaffolding poles and pieces of wood from building sites, and it was 1/10 the size exactly of the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Sure that weren't some other geezer?
Not a lot of people know that. Now, Pink Floyd never played the Glastonbury Festival, even though they would have been ideal, I think. But in 2002, Roger Waters brought his version of the band to Glastonbury. And they did almost all Pink Floyd stuff and 5 of his own songs. That's all I've got to say about Glastonbury Festival. It's overhyped, it's over here, it's on the television soon, it's happening live for those lucky enough or not to have tickets, and there you go. So if you want to go, or you are going, well, good luck with it, and I'm sure you'll have a wonderful time. I had some very good years at Glastonbury. I have made quite a few videos, so if you fancy watching more, please do so. This one recommended. Goodbye.